Hello and welcome to this week's edition of MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week Show, and my name is Rich.
And I'm Gary Mack.
And welcome to the 17th edition of MLB This Week, the MLB This Week Show for 2014. And Gary, we're right on the doorstep of the All-Star game now. Only one more game left to start for this week on Sunday night here. The Yankees and the Orioles at 8 o'clock, and then we're into the All-Star break officially.
Yeah, that's right, Rich. All-Star time again, and it's you wouldn't believe it, but doesn't seem like the season is just flying right by, and before you know it, it seems like we were just starting doing this show for the first time back in March or April, and then here we are in July in the All-Star break.
Yeah, just before the season started was our first show, and now we're 17 shows into it. And yeah, as you said, Gary, it's an extremely fast season so far. By numbers, we're a little bit further than half of the season, even though the All-Star break is known as the halfway mark most of the time. And it is amazing how fast the season is progressing, and we have some interesting races going on. The National League, Washington and Atlanta are in a dead heat as of tonight. In Milwaukee, of course, they're still on top, but they've lost a lot of ground in the last 2 to 3 weeks in the NL Central. They're only one game up on the St. Louis Cardinals. I remember a time when they were a good 6, 7, 8 games up on everybody there in the Central, Gary.
Yeah, Rich. They've really, I think, 1-9 or 2-8 in their last 10. They really came back to the pack, and they had some bad news this week. I don't know if you saw that the shortstop Gene Segura, his 9-month-old baby passed away in Dominican Republic, so he left the team the other day, and it was quite a shocker to the team, and we'll have to see how that affects the team in the second half. But they really did come back to the pack. I guess they're not hitting as well or getting the pitching that they were getting, and the Cardinals are making a run, as well as those Cincinnati Reds and the Pittsburgh Pirates. You have to watch out for them because they have gotten red hot and are coming on strong, only I think 4.5 games out, so they're still in that race, and that is going to be some race to watch the rest of the season.
Yes, it is indeed. I did hear about that story with Gene Segura. Just a terrible story, a tragedy, and I hope he can pull it all together and the Brewers can overcome that and continue on their good season they were having. Out west, the LA Dodgers on top of the National League West by 1 game, seesawing back and forth with the San Francisco Giants. And surprise, surprise, the San Diego Padres are in 3rd place out there. They're a full 12 games back, but that division has almost been like the American League East.
Yeah, and Rich, if you remember the beginning of the season, the Giants had such a big lead, and they fell back to the pack, and it didn't look like the Dodgers were going to get up there, and now the Dodgers are up there, and Padres are a bit back, but the Rockies were up there in first place for a while, and they really hit the skids, and now the Padres have jumped ahead of them. So, but I really think it's a two-team race out there, Dodgers and Giants, and that's going to be another division to watch. There's quite a few. It's going to be very interesting.
Yes, and of course, as these teams are doing better, they become more so the buyers. As we go into the hot stove section, one of my favorite times of the year, the next 2 weeks, is all the hype and all the hullabaloo about some of these free agent players that may be available, launched off of teams like the Phillies, possibly even the Boston Red Sox, a few teams that are 9 and 10 games back at the All-Star break. Historically, they're about ready to deal some of those high-priced free agents.
Going to be very, very the thing to keep your eyes on the next couple of weeks, as you say, to see who's going to get rid of who. And the rumors abound, of course. It looks like San Diego may dump a lot of their players, but who knows? Now that they've creeped into third place, you never know. They may want to stay there. And then Colorado, will they trade Tulowitzki? Will they trade Cargo? Lots of things going on, and it's really going to shake out in the next couple of weeks. Just wait for that first one trade or move to be made, and then the whole thing will probably just shake loose.
Yeah, that's for sure. It'll be that first trade, and then there's usually a frenzy of them. Well, we'll do the American League standings after a couple of our stories, but Gary, one of the first games of the All-Star Game is being played tonight, and that's the All-Star Futures game, where a lot of the AAA and AA, even some single-A players get together, and they make two teams, the USA and the World team, and they're having that game tonight right now. In fact, I think it's just about over. The USA was up 3-2 late in the ninth inning on that game.
Yeah, they were up 3-2, and I don't know who was the starter for that, for the USA or the World team in that, but interesting. Last year, of course, the Syndergaard, Noah Syndergaard of the Mets, he started the game, and he made the team again this year. Don't know if he was starting again. And Kevin Plawecki of the New York Mets, both the AAA Las Vegas, both were on the team this year. And the Phillies have anybody on this future team?
They had one player, a young player, just got promoted to high AA, I believe. Crawford is his last name, at shortstop. He's only 19. He did get a hit in the game, and I believe that game right now, actually I'm checking on it as we're doing the podcast, in the bottom of the ninth, and it is the USA 3, the World Team 2. And a lot of names that we may not know right now, but in the future we may see some of these names rise up through the ranks. Generally, some of the All-Stars actually get taken from these games.
Yes, they certainly do. And Fritz, can you imagine being 19 or 20 and being on this stage, or even just playing professional baseball? I mean, I was having trouble tying in my shoes at 19 years old. These guys are away from home already and playing pro ball, and wow, it's got to be a great life.
Oh yeah, that's what everybody dreams of that plays baseball. And of course, as you said, they're so young. They're just being brought up in the baseball atmosphere. Some of them have 2 or 3 years to go before they make the big leagues, but they're getting a little taste of the big league life there in Minneapolis, and going to be pretty interesting to see some of those names in the future. Certainly
will. See who makes it, who shakes out, who doesn't make it, and they say there's tons of guys at AAA that are better than a lot of the ball players in the major leagues. But what it comes down to, it's all in the head. It's all talent, but there's talent is a lot of talent. It's the mental approach and who can handle the pressure and who can't, and that's what makes the difference.
That's for sure. And of course, who can come through in the clutch when they get up to the plate and things like that. Well, you have a good story to start us off for this week affecting the All-Star game that happens on Tuesday night in Minneapolis. Some injuries have crept up into the All-Star game.
Well, Rich, it happens every season, but this year in particular, we have Tanaka, who, don't ask me to pronounce his first name, the sensation, the Japanese pitcher, the new sensation from the New York Yankees, that was made the All-Star team, and everybody thought he'd be a good chance to start it. He has come down with a tear in that ulnar nerve and could need Tommy John surgery. It's a slight tear. They're going to do some plasma-rich, I guess it's injections, and they rest him for 6 weeks, and they will go from there and see what happened But he's out for a while. Could be out for the season. As is the other two guys. Brandon Phillips, he tore a ligament in his thumb, and he's going to be out. He needed surgery, as well as Yadier Molina. He tore a ligament. I think it was his left thumb, but he's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks or longer. And all three of these guys theoretically could be out the rest of the season. And not only is this a blow to their team's pennant races and to the All-Star game, but really the pennant races are the big thing. And key players, especially Molina and Tanaka, with their respective teams, because the Yankees, they were relying on him in their pitching staff, and he's been their dominant pitcher there this season. And of course, Molina is a dominant catcher and really the heart and soul of that St. Louis Cardinals. So interesting to see, and interesting also that two of the guys that got hurt are in the Central Division and members of their team.
Yeah, and I'm looking over the stats right now for Tanaka. As you said, his first year in the major leagues, 25 years old, 12-4 for the Yankees so far this year, 2.51 ERA, and as you said, I think he's been sort of the Yankees' ace this year, and he's going to be sorely missed if he misses the rest of the season. And I think that would make the Yankees go out and even spend more money. We could see them offering big bucks for a pitcher like Cliff Lee or somebody like that, maybe even a Cole Hamels. So it sort of raises the stakes in our first story that we talked about with the hot stove coming up within the next 2 weeks.
Well, Rich, and I think it also shows that perhaps that the game has passed the Yankees by a little bit in their philosophy of buying a free agent. I think they're learning you can no longer buy a free agent over the age of 30 and give him a long contract and a lot of money, because now you're hamstrung. Now, Tanaka was not over 30, but they're really hamstrung with that team. Beltran is hurt. McCann is not playing well, hitting. Teixeira is hitting home runs, but that's about it. Of course, Cheetah's going to retire. He's 40. That's an old team right now, and I think we're seeing the results of that. And it's just funny that Tanaka pitched years in Japan and innings and all of that, and he comes over here and the arm goes. I don't know. They use the same size mound and everything. The only thing I read is that the dirt they use is a lot looser, and I don't know what difference that makes. They say it makes it easier to drag your back foot, if you push off, but I don't know, but here we are again with the possible Tommy John surgery and a slight tear in that ulnar nerve. Now, there are guys, Roy Halladay included, that have pitched with that for years, so we'll see, but it doesn't bode well for the Yankees or for baseball in general, because this is just another black eye with that Tommy John thing.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's another big name that may go down this season. It's probably one of the worst seasons ever for these types of injuries.
Terrible. It's been a miserable year for these kind of injuries.
Yep. Well, we'll have to see what happens in that case. And as we said, the All-Star break happening in just a couple days, Tuesday night. It's the 85th All-Star game in the history of the All-Star game. And the first telecast nationally on the All-Star game, Gary, was done in 1950 on July 11th, just a couple days ago. It passed an anniversary for the first nationally broadcast game way back in 1950. And predating that game, the first night game, All-Star game, was in 1943 at Philadelphia's Shibe Park. So a little bit of baseball All-Star game history there for you.
That's interesting that they played the night game before they broadcast it, but Shibe Park, and then I believe they renamed that to Connie Mack Stadium, didn't they? Or Connie Mack Park. And
Yeah, I believe so. And just this past week, actually, on my other podcast I do about the Phillies, called Phillies Talk, we interviewed a vice president of the Phillies, and he actually was with the Phillies team when they were at the old Connie Mack Stadium, and that was one of his comments. He couldn't wait to close that stadium in the late 60s. By that time, it had fallen into disrepair. He had said it was practically falling apart at that point, and also it was located in a neighborhood in Philadelphia, so there was very little parking around that ballpark. It was almost like a Wrigley Field type of a setup there in Philadelphia. And then, of course, in 1971, the Phillies opened Veterans Stadium. So if anybody has any interest in some early Phillies talk in the late 70s and late 60s even, you might want to tune into my latest edition of Phillies Talk podcast that I do.
Yeah, I would advise it. It's a great podcast, and you and the sports dog there, and I enjoy listening to it every week.
Thanks very much. And of course, Gary's show, as we do this show together, me and Gary, he also does his own show called Mets Musings. And Gary, you also, by the way, MetsMusings.com, you can find Gary's fine podcast there. You've also just recently launched a Brooklyn Cyclones AAA or AA podcast.
Yeah, it's actually short season single A affiliate in the New York Penn League, and it's doing pretty well so far. I've got a little following starting to build up here, and it's been a lot of fun. And I've had a couple of really big Cyclone fans on there that really helped fill in some of the time and the information for the recaps and things like that. And I've got a couple more lined up. I've got this week's show. I've got the media relations manager of the Jamestown Jammers lined up.
Uh-huh.
And, as they come into Brooklyn, and he'll talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's the Pittsburgh Pirates affiliate. So it's been a lot of fun and a lot of work to get started with it, but it's up and running now, so I'm having a blast.
That's great. And where can people find your podcast on the New York Penn League Brooklyn Cyclones?
Well, you can find that at cyclonesfevercast.blogspot.com, and you'll find it right there. And thanks for mentioning that, Rich.
Very cool. I'm a listener myself. I just attended my first minor league game not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago. Long overdue to visit some minor league games. Had a great time, so I appreciate listening to your show as well.
Minor leagues are a blast, and I never realized it myself until a few years, and it really, they're fun to go to, and it's fun to see these kids at a young age and see what they blossom into.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a short look at the American League here as we're doing the podcast here on Sunday night, July 13th. And as we said, there's one more game that we know is just underway, the Yankees and the Orioles, and that's a pretty important game for the American League East. The Baltimore Orioles currently in first place there, with Toronto quickly behind them at 3.5 games back, and then you have the Yankees at 4 games back.
Yeah, Yankees are hanging in there, but they're a game above 500, and like you said, this is a big game for them because they really want to win, try to get within 2.5 or 3, I should say. And the Rays are right there behind them, so they're still not out of it, and I hate to rule anybody out in that division because the Red Sox can get hot too, and you never know what they could put together in the second half. And 9 games from the first place to the last place, it's not insurmountable. It's a lot, but it's not insurmountable, and it could be a wild second half. And we've been talking about these divisions, and it seems like there's a race in almost every division.
Yeah, the American League Central, Detroit has calmed down a little bit. They're still in firm command there with a 53-38 record. Just behind them is the Kansas City Royals at 6.5 games back. Then Cleveland at 7.5. They're always a threat out there to turn things around. Terry Francona and the Cleveland Indians. And then out west, it's one of those races again. You have the Oakland A's and the LA Angels now closing a lot of ground. They're only a game and a half back from Billy Beane's Oakland A's.
Yeah, I had to look at this again because I thought that Oakland they're playing so well and had a substantial lead there, and they seem to have lost it. Though they didn't really go into a big slump. I guess just LA keeps winning, and at the inopportune times when Oakland loses, they'll lose a game as LA keeps winning. So another one to watch, Rich, as we go along towards the second half.
Yeah, the LA Angels 9-1 in their last 10, and that can start to catapult you up in the standings pretty fast there. And it's only a matter of time before the Angels do well in the playoffs as well. So keep an eye on them. They've been rumored to be looking for some starting pitching as well. So all of a sudden you've got a couple teams from the American League that are kind of in need of starting pitching. You got the Yankees. You have the LA Angels has said they're publicly looking for a good starter, and there's only but so many good starters to go around. So we'll have to see who gets who in the coming weeks, and that's going to be a main theme of our show in the next 2 weeks, I'm thinking, Gary.
Yeah, I think so, Rich. With the week being off this week, not going to be a lot of stories unless they're rumors and speculation. So, I think from now on in, it's all going to be about trades.
Yeah, and you would think that a lot of baseball people want their fans to keep coming through the turnstiles, but your next story has me scratching my head. I didn't hear this during the week, and I'm looking forward to hearing this story.
Well, apparently what we're talking about, folks, is that the Colorado Rockies, a fan went to the game. His name was Michael Ferguson, and he went to a game on July 4th. And, it's not cheap to go to a ball game. Mm-hmm. And he was disappointed by the experience. He filled out a feedback form that they have laying around the stadium and left it in a comments drop box. And apparently he raised the hackles of somebody, including the team's owner, because a few days after the survey was filled out, and he left it there, and he admitted that he was not nice. He was frustrated because to spend the money and to see how they're playing Colorado. And 2 days later, he found out his comments did not go unnoticed. He received a reply in his email stating, "If product and experience that bad, don't come." Signed by the owner and chairman and CEO of the Colorado Rockies, Dick Monfort. Now, this is a new one on us, as you said, Rich. Usually they send out apologetic letters, and but I guess this guy got ticked off by what was written in the survey, the owner, and just told them, don't bother coming back if you're not happy. He later recanted that and said that he probably was a little too severe with his reply.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, as you said, usually owners want people to come, and he's telling them, you don't like it, don't come. So, could possibly tell you that maybe they're going to be sellers at the trade deadline.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't often hear that, especially with a game like baseball. I'm sure he wishes he could recall those words and act like he never said them. And also, you have a story on a sleeping fan, and this happened in New York. Again, I didn't see the game live, but I read it in the papers and online the next day. Very interesting story here.
Well, a New York man was caught sleeping at a recent Yankee game. He was filing a $10 million defamation suit against the broadcasters, Dan Shulman, and John Crook for their avalanche of disparaging words. And this is a story that was in the New York Post. Andrew Robert Rector admitted that he briefly slept while attending the April 13th game between AL East rivals. And when the ESPN cameras caught him sleeping during the fourth inning, the Sunday Night Baseball announcers launched into what he described as an unending verbal crusade against him, with their vituperative utterances redistributed on the MLB website the following day. According to the report, Rector's suit was riddled with typos and improper grammar, claiming the broadcasters insinuated that he is a fat cow that needed 2 seats at a time and is a confused individual that neither understands or nor knows anything about the history or the meaning of rivalry between Red Sox and the Yankees. ESPN issued a statement and said that the comments attributed to ESPN and our answers were clearly not said nor telecast. The claims presented here are wholly without merit. And ESPN, Major League Baseball, and the Yankees are named as defendants in the suit. So this guy's suing everybody, trying to get some money. I don't think it's going to work. If you watch the tape, they played it here a number of times. The things they said were, I don't even think they were offensive against them. They kidded around about, wow, he must be tired, or, these Red Sox-Yankee games take a long time. I don't know where he's getting this from, all of this nonsense, except that he did get hammered in the social media. But you can't sue. ESPN's got nothing to do with that, or Major League Baseball. And so we'll see what happens here. Somebody will probably give him $500,000, and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I've often seen people doze off at the ballpark, and not much is said about it. Very interesting story here. We'll have to see if anybody agrees with him that it was harmful to his name, so to speak, and his reputation. But it seems like everybody's looking for an edge these days. Lawsuits like this are like very common nowadays. Not so much ones with ESPN, but everybody's looking for an edge, and you have those hungry lawyers out there, of course, that would take this kind of a case.
That's for sure. And maybe he wants to get money to get some memorabilia. And speaking of memorabilia, Rich, you've got a story that covers some of that.
Yes, coming up to commemorate the All-Star Game, which is also known by some as the Midsummer Classic, over at Steiner Sports Memorabilia, steinersports.com. They're having a Midsummer Classic auction to commemorate the game here. And of course they have a lot of signed baseballs from All-Stars of yesteryear. Lefty Gomez, here's a ball George Steinbrenner signed from the boss. Minimum bid starting around $300 for that baseball. But a lot of great authentic memorabilia here commemorating the All-Star Game. They even have some All-Star Game chairs from last year that you can go online and bid on. Different signatures with them. Torrey Hunter's All-Star Game chair. All the All-Stars basically have a chair on here. Clayton Kershaw, minimum bid starting at $850 for an All-Star Game signed chair. That was the ones that they used in the locker room. So if you're big into memorabilia, you might want to check it out. Of course, you better have a bit of a pocketbook to go with that, because these are what the bids are starting at. Who knows what they'll end up. But a lot of great stuff there. Signed jerseys, of course, signed helmets, all kinds of all-star memorabilia. Here's a Derek Jeter signed jersey from last year, the number 2 Yankee jersey. I'm sure that's going to go for big money. Starting bid is $400 on that, Gary.
A little too rich for me.
And myself as well, but of course, Steiner Sports Memorabilia, one of the biggest authentic memorabilia companies out there. And I believe it was started by one of the ex-ESPN announcers, Charlie Steiner, as well.
I don't know how it got started, but boy, I know they're one of the biggest. And I wonder if they'll have any Yasiel Puig hair there next year.
Yeah, he sort of got a special haircut.
Yeah, he certainly did. He's got that all-star going in the hair there, so he's ready for the big game.
Yeah, and of course, all of our listeners of the podcast, you might want to pop on over to YouTube. You can see some of the visuals that we're talking about here, and of course, Gary just had Yasiel Puig's picture up, and that's quite a cut there. It's I'll bet you paid a little extra for that haircut.
I would imagine he did, Rick. That's quite a do. I mean, he's got the whole star thing going, and the mohawk, it looks like, sort of. So
yeah.
He's got the whole thing going on there. So, hey, look, he's 23 or something, and having some fun, and nothing wrong with that. It's not hurting anybody.
That's for sure. Well, I'm looking forward to the All-Star Game, Gary, and of course on our next show we'll talk all about the results of the All-Star Game. And if you want to stop on over to our website, it's MLBThisWeek.com. You can see all of our previous shows there, and you can also check out the gear that we use to do our shows. You can even purchase it right through some of the links that we have right on that website, and you'll help out the show a little bit. We try to plow any profits we get from doing our shows right back into our hobby. So if you like Gary's microphone, or you want to learn a little bit about our gear that we use to do the shows, just stop on by our website, MLB This Week, or MLBThisWeek.com, and check out our page on our podcast gear.
And don't forget to get an audio version of the show. You can get that at MLBThisWeek.podomatic.com, or on iTunes, or on Stitcher Smart Radio. We're available on that as well.
Yeah, and Gary, tonight you're using a new camera switching into the photos. Hangout Magic's working pretty good there tonight.
Yeah, it's working well so far, and we'll see how it works as we go along.
Yeah, of course, our Google Hangout feature here that we record the YouTube shows on is always updating and changing, and we really love it, and we try to keep up on it for you, the listeners. And in the future, we might even be doing a show on how to become a podcaster. I think a lot of people might want to hear our take on how to do a sports podcast, Gary.
Oh, yeah, that would be very interesting, and I'm sure there are lots of people out there that are interested, and you don't have to have a ton of money, no matter what anybody tells you about having equipment list. You can get started and sound pretty good nowadays at a reasonable amount of money. It all depends upon what you want to do.
That's for sure. So look for an upcoming show or two on our podcast setup. So I think I would really love to do a show on that for our listeners, and I think there'll be a lot of interest in it. Well, Gary, you have our last show of the night, and it's a show that, or a story rather, that will make a lot of people happy out there at the All-Star Game.
Well, it'll cut down on lines. I don't know when they see what the prices are if it'll make them too happy, but the beer line at the Minnesota Twins games and at the All-Star game is going to be a lot more interesting now, because Target Field has introduced a first-of-its-kind self-serve beer station. Yes, I said that right. It's a self-serve beer station which charges by the ounce and offers 4 brew varieties for patrons to choose from. It's like a soda fountain mixed with a self-checkout line at the supermarket.
It's
The
amazing.
first serve beer station, they're called draft serves, and they were created by Delaware North Concession Service and beer giant Anheuser-Busch, and it debuted at the last Sunday's Yankees-Twins game. A second one will be installed in time for the All-Star game, and apparently how it works is a patron goes to a concession cashier, shows his ID to verify the age, and buys a vending card with either $10 or $20 on it for use at the station. There will be $50 cards available for the All-Star game. There are 4 beers to choose from, and they can be bought by the ounce. Bud and Bud Light at 38 cents per ounce. Shock Top Lemon Shandy and Goose Island and 312 Urban Pale Ale. Goose Island 312 Urban Pale Ale. That's a big name for a beer. 40 cents per ounce. Customers can withdraw up to 48 ounces every 15 minutes. If that sounds like a lot, there is an employee at each machine to not only check ID but also to intercede should a patron appear intoxicated. So self-serve, that'll keep the beer lines moving quicker. You know, I did see this on a TV show in a bar, and that was a little. I forget the particulars now, whether or not you had to buy a card or whether or not you just could stick a credit card in, and you know, it was like going to the gas station. You know, you punched in how much and it would stop when it reached that, and a perfect 4 every time. So they're going to try this out, and so far it seems to be working very well. And you have to kind of wonder, though, that why in Minnesota and why didn't they try it in St. Louis first, or even in Milwaukee, 2 big beer towns in this country, and Minnesota gets this draft serve. Self-serve beer distribution center, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Of course, it's going to get a lot of airplay at the All-Star game, no doubt. And I could only think of maybe they'll have a trap door as well. So if they are intoxicated, maybe they can press a button, and the trap door opens, and you go down a chute somewhere. So that might be the next thing coming up, but interesting story there. And again, if you're listening to our audio podcast, you might want to tune in to the video version of that, because Gary had a nice picture of that apparatus set up, and it's quite a setup there. It's moving into the digital age a little bit, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, it's moving in that direction, and this goes along with the Philadelphia Philly minor league team that has the video games on the urinals when you go to the bathroom.
Oh gosh, yeah, I haven't even seen that, but that's a little bit much for me. I don't like to be in the can for that long.
Yeah, right.
I get my business done and move on.
Get out of there, yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this edition of MLB This Week, Gary. It was another great show, and I look forward to a lot of great shows on the other side of the All-Star game.
It should be great as we wind down and into the second half and hit the dog days of summer and the hot August nights. So stay with us the rest of the way.
Yep, and it's our pleasure to talk with you every week. And Gary, you have a great week, and we'll talk to you again on the next edition of MLB This Week.